here at the San Jose Convention Center. We just got done with the media availability for the Seahawks on Wednesday. Ben, we do this subjectively as in a professional capacity, as respected members of the media. You couldn't help that your team were one of the ones to get to the final two. You must be like a kid in a candy shop here this morning.
I in the most media responsible way possible, I had goosebumps talking to JSN and asking him a couple of questions there at the presser. It can't be helped that myself and Shane's team so happen to be involved this week in everything going leading up to the Super Bowl. So we apologise in advance. Some of that fandom will come out, but overall, I think we got great access to everybody, and they were very more than welcome to answer everything we had, and we got some, even if you weren't a fan, I think we got some great insight as the Super Bowl matchup coming up this week.
Absolutely. We went in, so we kicked off with the coach and quarterbacks conference. We talked to Sam Darnold, or we heard from Sam Darnold, should I say, and I have to say, from a personal point of view, we've talked so much about Sam Darnold's development and his trials and tribulations early on in his career, and these shaping him as a player, as a man. But I just got a sense. I came out of that press conference with so much respect for Sam Darnold as not just a player, but as a man. We saw he talked about his growth in mindset. He came across so mature, beyond his years. I know he's been in the league 8 years, but he's still a relatively young guy. He talked about learning from his mistakes, learning from and not being, I suppose, bitter, not being vindictive, and just taking all the positives from all of the little curveballs he's or not so little curveballs that he's had to endure. He talked about a growth in mindset. He referenced Jerry Rice saying that you're never going to have a perfect day, and he takes that on board now more so than when he was a young quarterback, and not allowing himself to get caught up in the moment when maybe a mistake or two, when things don't go his way. He talked about he had a great quote. He said, you want to be hard on yourself, and be the best person you can be, or be the best version of yourself that you can be, but you don't want to be hard on yourself in the moment so it doesn't engulf you. But how did you find Sam Darnold, and what was your takeaway from his press conference?
So he came across very humble, and look, he has had some rough years leading up to this year. Obviously last year in Minnesota, the end of that wasn't even particularly as easygoing as he would have liked his career to go, but he just came across very humble, and I think everything that he's gone through has led up to this experience. He has all the right to turn around and be not humble. He's thrown 1,700 yards to JSN. He's won 14 games again. He's one of the only quarterbacks to do that 2 seasons in a row, and with 2 different teams, might I add. So he has all the bragging rights in the world, and he's not using them. He's letting his teammates and his coaches speak on his behalf on how good and prepared he is going into this game.
I got to ask Mike McDonald a question, and I chose to ask him about Nick Emenwari and that moment, in the wake of the Reek Woolen penalty, the taunting penalty, and how Nick Emenwari showed, I suppose, wisdom beyond his years in being the voice of reason. And he talked about the importance of creating that culture of, allowing these young players to express themselves. Yeah. And he gave a lot of credit to the players, not just, he didn't take it himself. He said the players have created an environment where everybody has a voice, where everybody can speak up. And young players like Nick Emenwari have been so impactful on the field, feel that they can make an impact off the field. They're not uncomfortable, or they don't feel like that's out of place. McDonald showed an awful lot of respect for Mike Vrabel, and without getting into the details of what he can expect from Vrabel and his offense, his defense, didn't get in too much to the X's and O's, but he said he's enjoying the process. Really, really happy to be back to football, because it's Wednesday now. They get a couple of days of just being back to football. It's been a circus for the last few days, but he said he's enjoyed the process.
Yeah, the guy that, as you said, they're not going to give us away the game plan and stuff like that. And a couple of people were trying to pry at that and trying to figure out how that was going to work. But we talked about it on the show yesterday, just the amount of respect between these two teams. They're in the Super Bowl for a reason. They're both excellent at what they do, and they have strengths and weaknesses, both teams alike. And I think they're going to be glad to get in and get some rhythm going now over the next few days. And as you said, return to football as opposed to the circus that comes along with being in a Super Bowl.
We got a quick chat with Julian Love. We talked about he was talking about what is building towards being another legendary defense and legendary secondary for the Seahawks. We asked him about the weight of the Legion of Boom and how that might cast a shadow over them, and the importance of establishing their own identity. I think he was very balanced in his response to that. He talked about embracing it, having huge amount of respect for what's gone before them in the Legion of Boom, but wanting to be their own version of themselves. Yeah. And we talked about a few potential nicknames. So yeah, you mentioned the dark side. I think he said MOB. You know what MOB stands for?
I'm going to have to look into that because I wasn't quite sure what that meant. So
I presume it said something to do with LOB.
The only thing I have to go off right now is the dark side, and I think that it's not quite stuck, it's not as quite rhythmic as the Legion of Boom, but hopefully after a Super Bowl win, the nickname will stick, or they'll get maybe a better one. But as for Julian Love, he was great. He was very open and honest about what their defense is, and that they respect the history behind the previous Legion of Boom and what that defense meant to getting their last Super Bowl. But it was fully aware that they need to build their own path.
Absolutely. Cooper Kupp and Sam Darnold had huge respect for each other. Sam talked an awful lot about Cooper Kupp in his press conference, and we got some one-to-one time with Cooper, and he talked about the growth and development of that friendship. Sam Darnold talked about Cooper Kupp still setting that example, being the first one in the facility. They race each other in, and if Sam Darnold gets there before Cooper Kupp, he's sure to let him know. I think what came through and what shone through on that, not just the development of a really natural and a real friendship and a real bond between these two players, but a real respect for each other and demanding high standards. And Cooper Kupp said, look, even if Sam Darnold's not the first in the building, he's the one out there setting the standards. He wanted to deflect the attention from himself, but there was a real sense, and there was an awful lot of the media, an awful lot of other players, an awful lot of people in the building paying tribute to Cooper Kupp and the impact that he's had inside the building, not just on the field and with his play, assuming a different role to the number one receiver that he was in LA, but just his character, his demeanour, his standards.
I was quite surprised at the press conference just how many questions were directed between himself and Cooper Kupp's relationship and what that meant. Obviously, Cooper Kupp's been here, done that, Super Bowl MVP, Triple Crown winner. So he's going to bring a lot to the table, and on the other end of that, JSN has had such a prolific season that sometimes Cooper Kupp gets forgotten about, but it's that connection that Cooper Kupp and Sam Darnold have, that when it matters on third down, on clutch moments, we've seen it a couple of times against the Rams in their games together, that they mightn't be as consistent, but when it comes down to it, that they've crossed the X's and O's and they've gone over this scenario in their head in those early mornings, that when they need that third down, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 12, they've got it exactly drawn up and they get it right. So, and we've seen that play out a number of times this season, so it's good to see.
And you mentioned goosebumps. You got in with Jackson Smith and Jigba. I could see it kind of shaking in front of me there. It was a real a fanboy moment. But in fairness to you, you went and asked him straight away about how he felt and what he learned from others, and the impact of stepping out from the shadow of the likes of a DK Metcalf and having the confidence to establish himself as a number one receiver. He was, he let you know he was not short of confidence. He knew he had that all along in him, and I'm not saying that that it was a misstep in question or anything like that, but what came across is a huge confidence in his ability and his belief, and he was never in doubt that he was going to be a number one.
If I'm honest, that was a bit of a layup on my end. I knew he was going to turn around. I've seen JSN in college at Ohio State. He had 300 yards and a couple of touchdowns in the Rose Bowl, so the guy is not short of confidence. But he was very respectful of the guys he played with over the last couple of years, and now stepping up into that number one receiver role with those players out the door. The confidence shone through, and he was like, I'm the same player I've been since high school, since college. So it was just about time for the world to see it. So.
Absolutely. So you're going to come down from that as, how do you see the rest of the day going? You're going to have to go and have a lie down, or we straight back into the thick of it?
That's it. I'm done. I'm going to bed. That's absolutely exhausted me.
Well, we have a bus to catch. I can see all the media departing now, so we better get on our bus back to Radio Row. Stay tuned for the rest of the week for more content from the Irish NFL Show.